ATTZ-FM HD3, providing news and information 24 hours a day from the BBC World Service, a digital broadcast service of Texas Tech Public Media.
It's 14 hours GMT, 9 on America's East Coast. Welcome to NewsHour from the BBC World Service. I'm Razia Iqbal. After months of political violence, the Central African Republic goes to the polls. But is the country peaceful enough for an election?
Considering the huge size of the CAR and the very widely scattered nature of settlements, it's extraordinary that they've managed to restore the level of security that they have.
A Syrian human rights activist gives his first interview since being released from a Syrian jail.
They try to destroy the person from inside. Feel like there is no chance to stay alive in this situation.
Also a special report from South Africa on Jacob Zuma's reputation and the political future of the ANC. And I speak to the American conductor Marin Alsop, a rare female presence at the top of classical music. All coming up after the latest news.
Hello, this is David Austin with the BBC News. Rescue workers in China are trying to reach 8 miners trapped deep underground after a gypsum mine in Shandong province collapsed last Friday. They've managed to send a group food and light through a series of boreholes, but are being hampered by further rock falls and sudden inrushes of water. State TV showed a rescue worker speaking to the trapped miners.
Hope you can hold on down there. We'll be sending you some food soon. Your answer will be based on what you need. Everyone should drink a certain quantity, but don't drink too much.
Migrants trying to reach the European Union via the short sea crossing from Turkey to Greece are facing a sudden deterioration in the weather. In the space of 24 hours, the Aegean Sea has become so stormy that attempting to cross the narrow strait by boat could be life-threatening. Around 2,000 migrants have arrived in Lesbos every day in December so far. Saudis have started paying almost double to fill their cars up with petrol, in the first sign of a government austerity plan to tackle the sharp fall in oil revenue. The rise has just come into effect after the ruling administration announced cuts in subsidies to a range of basic utilities in its budget for the coming year. Sebastian Usher reports.
There have been queues at petrol stations as forecourts closed while prices were marked up by around 40%. Taxi drivers, on whom a large proportion of the population depend, especially women who aren't allowed to drive themselves, have raised their fares, and there'll be a knock-on effect on most basic supplies. The petrol price is still extremely low at about 23 US cents a litre, but it's a sign of changing times. The Saudis are currently running an unprecedented budget deficit as oil prices tumble.
Facebook is facing the prospect of 2 lawsuits after a judge in the United States ruled that shareholders could sue the company for allegedly misleading the public before it floated on the stock market in 2012. Here's Andrew Walker.
Facebook's share price fell sharply in the months after it began trading on the stock market, losing more than half its value. Although anyone who still has the shares today will have made money. Some of the investors who lost claim the company concealed concerns about how increased use of mobile devices, such as smartphones, would affect its revenue. A judge has said that 2 class actions, in which groups of investors sue the company together, can go ahead. Facebook has expressed disappointment about the decision and said it's appealing against it.
Voting is taking place in the Central African Republic in long-delayed presidential and parliamentary elections. It's hoped the polls will help to stabilise the country after several years of sectarian violence. UN peacekeepers and police have been deployed to stop a repeat of the disturbances 3 weeks ago during a referendum on a new constitution. Logistical problems have been reported in the capital, Bangui. World News from the BBC. Syrian government forces backed by Russian airstrikes are continuing a big offensive to try to recapture a strategic town in the province of Daraa. The army says it's entered the town of Sheikh Maskin from several sides. Rebel sources say that troops are on the outskirts of the town as heavy fighting continues. Given life sentences for planning bomb attacks in London. Mohammed Rahman, who was 25, was spending at least 27 years in jail. His wife, Sana Ahmed Khan, was given a minimum term of 24 years. Mohammed Reflan discussed targeting the London Underground and a major shopping centre using the name Silent Bomber on social media. India says it's making every possible effort to trace the biological parents of Geeta, a woman of 23 who recently returned to India more than a decade after straying into Pakistan as a child. The Foreign Minister, Sushma Swaraj, made the pledge after visiting Geeta, who is deaf and cannot speak. She's been living in a care facility in central India since leaving Pakistan in October. A priest in the Philippines has been suspended from his diocese after he sang a Christmas song while riding a hoverboard during Mass. A video of the priest gliding up and down the lines was widely viewed on social media. Lisa Costello has this report.
Judging by the accounts, the congregation liked their priest's unusual welcome to Christmas Eve Mass. Unfortunately, the Catholic Church was less enthusiastic. Father Albert San Jose was suspended after video of him singing while sporting a white cassock and riding a hoverboard between packed pews went viral online. Church authorities have condemned his actions, saying the Eucharist demands the utmost respect. They say Father Albert has apologised and will now spend time out of his parish reflecting on his actions.
Lisa Costello reporting. BBC News.
Hello and welcome to NewsHour from the BBC World Service. It comes to you live from our studios in central London. I'm Razia Iqbal. In just a moment, we'll be talking about the Central African Republic, where voters have been going to the polls in important presidential and parliamentary elections. And later in the programme, you can hear an interview with Marin Alsop. She is musical director of the Baltimore Symphony Orchestra and one of the first women to lead a major symphony orchestra. Conducting is an ambition she's had since she was a young child.
As soon as I saw Leonard Bernstein conducting, I knew. I have no idea why. I think some people inherently have this desire to lead something and to be in charge of the big picture. And I think even when I was 10, I was extremely bossy. So I knew.
The conductor, Marin Alsop, very much in charge of the big picture. Stay with us for that interview. We begin, though, in the Central African Republic because there are and parliamentary elections. In recent years, the country has seen brutal sectarian violence, and there's a lot invested in these polls. Hope, for a start, that the outcome will help to stabilise a country that some feel was so violent that it came close to the edge of genocide. UN peacekeepers and police have been deployed to expert on Francophone Africa at the independent foreign affairs think tank in London, Chatham House.
For the last 2 years, the country's been in a very fragile situation. It was almost on the verge of genocide when French and African Union peacekeepers intervened to stop a spreading conflict that was sparked when a mainly Muslim militia, the Seleka, took over the country, provoking a backlash from community militias that were mainly Christian. And for a year or so, the country looked as if it could slide into a really disastrous wide-scale communal conflict. But gradually, over the last year or so, peace has been not completely restored, but pieced together bit by bit, community by community, region by region. The international forces have extended their reach into the north, into the east, and into the west to restore some sort of basic state authority. But throughout this period, there's been a transitional government which has really nominated, and now this is the chance to elect somebody with proper democratic legitimacy.
And who do you think should get the credit then for making these elections possible, given how drastic the situation was? You talk about a near genocide situation.
It really was a genocide. I mean, there were reports in some towns where the peacekeepers physically had to form almost a security cordon to stop extremists on either side attacking each other. But I think really two factors have contributed. Despite some flaws, and the UN operation, the peacekeeping operation, has not been totally flawless. There's an investigation into alleged child abuse by some of the peacekeepers going on at the moment, which could be a big step on France or at the UN level. Overall, the peacekeeping operation has been run with quite a strong degree of coordination and efficiency. The different contributing voting countries have worked quite well together. And considering the huge size of the CAO and the very widely scattered natural settlements, it's extraordinary that they've managed to restore the level of security that they have.
Just in the context that you've just outlined, what's your assessment of the chances of these elections being free and fair?
I think it's quite reasonable, actually, because the CAO doesn't have a long history of deep-rooted inter-ethnic or inter-religious conflict. This crisis over the last 2 or 3 years sprang out of generalised instability rather than some sort of deep-rooted divisions that have to be overcome. So there's a reasonable chance that whoever is elected president and whoever are elected as members of parliament will be regarded as legitimate and broadly accepted by most Central Africans, whichever region or religion or ethnic background they come from, and will have a chance of rebuilding a functioning state.
Paul Melly from Chatham House. Well, just before we came on air, I spoke to Margot Ben. She's a Canadian journalist who's covering the elections in the capital Bangui, including developments in a Muslim neighbourhood of the city known as PK5, where there have in the past been violent clashes.
Polling stations were due to open at 6 a.m. this morning, and people had already been queuing before that. But at 6 a.m., polling stations were not open yet, and there were logistical problems. In one polling station near the city centre, party members mandated to supervise the vote were denied entry as polling agents had not been briefed on the paperwork that these observers needed to present. In the PK5 neighbourhood, voters started shouting angrily and protesting in the courtyard of one of the main polling stations there. Half of the voting material had not arrived, and voters whose names began with O, M, or S were not able to cast their vote. So now this is being fixed, and voting, I think, has actually started now. People are queuing massively to go vote. It's going relatively smoothly, both in Bangui and in the provinces. I've heard from places like Bambari and Bossangof, and in places like the northeast, that's territories controlled by ex-Seleka leader Noureddin Adam. In all these places, people are voting.
When you talk about the